I'm a 36-year-old woman, and I've been called a lot of things in my life: organized, distant, calm, too calm, but never reckless. I've always done things by the book. I double-check every lock, every email, every receipt. I've had the same job in compliance for 9 years. I plan grocery lists by aisle. That kind of person. My sister Leah is 2 years younger than me. She was the one people remembered. She could walk into a silent room and turn it into a party without even trying. She painted murals in high school, dyed her hair every season, dated people who quoted poetry badly, and never finished anything she started. But people forgave her easily. She was magnetic like that. We were close growing up, even though we were opposites. I kept her secrets. She pulled me into things I never would have tried on my own. But as we got older, the differences grew harder to ignore. I wanted stability. She wanted freedom. Leah got pregnant at 25. She didn't mean to. The guy she was seeing left as soon as she told him. I remember her standing in my kitchen that night, trying to joke about it but holding her stomach like it already hurt. She moved back in with our mother for a while. That didn't last. Leah didn't do well with curfews or core charts, and our mother had no patience for missed wake-up calls or crying at midnight. I didn't step in. I was working long hours, keeping to my routines, and to be honest, I didn't think it was my place. Leah had always insisted she didn't need help. Nora was born in late spring, a quiet baby with dark hair and long fingers. Leah brought her by once or twice in those first few weeks, usually to drop something off or pick up something she'd left at my place months ago. She looked worn out, like the kind of tired that makeup can't cover. When Nora was 8 months old, Leah called me. She needed a break. Just 2 weeks. She said she wasn't sleeping, and everything felt too loud. She showed up that afternoon with a grocery bag full of baby clothes, a half-used pack of diapers, and a sticky note that said 8 ounces every 4 hours, loves lullabies. Nora stayed in the guest room. At first, I treated it like babysitting. I washed her bottles. I used the feeding chart. I warmed up sweet potatoes and made airplane noises with the spoon. But then Leah didn't come back. Not in a week. Not in a month. Not even when I told her Nora had her first cold, or when she started crawling toward the cat like it was a mystery she had to solve. I bought a crib. I installed safety locks. I added Nora to my health insurance. I didn't ask too many questions, just adjusted. I figured Leah would return when she was ready. Instead, she moved out of state. Said she needed space to figure out who she was. I got a short voicemail and a blurry photo of a mountain. That was it. The next 12 months were a blur of daycare drop-offs, fevers, nap battles, and tiny victories. Nora called the cat Mo, mashed blueberries into her hair, and learned to say no with perfect clarity before she could say my name. Leah called every few weeks, usually late at night. Her voice always sounded too fast or too slow. She talked about art classes and therapists and trying. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she laughed like none of it was serious. She never asked how Nora was doing. Not really. When Nora turned 2, her pediatrician recommended I get legal custody, just in case. So I did. Leah didn't fight it. No paperwork from her side, no angry phone calls, just silence. That same week, I got one final call. I almost didn't pick up. Leah's voice was flat this time, not drunk, not frantic, just cold. She said I wasn't doing this because I loved Nora. She said I just liked being in control, that I was too cold to love anyone at all. Then she hung up. I stood in the kitchen for a while after that. The bottle warmer beeped. Nora laughed at something on the TV. And I threw out the sticky note she'd left all those months ago. That was the last time I heard from her for years. I never returned that last call. After the second time Leah left a voicemail slurring her words and blaming me for things I never did, I blocked her number. I didn't want Nora growing up around that kind of instability. She had already been passed around enough before landing with me. Nora was 3.5 when she started calling me Mama. It happened while we were brushing her teeth. I handed her the cup of water to rinse, and she said, "Thanks, Mama," like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't correct her. I didn't say anything at all. I just wiped toothpaste from her chin and moved on. The next morning, I updated her daycare forms, emergency contact, pickup authorization, parental identity. I made everything match how life actually looked. One parent listed me. I called my HR department and made sure my healthcare coverage included dependents. I changed my work schedule so I could pick her up on time without racing red lights. It wasn't dramatic. It was just life. That year, I still sent Leah an email on Nora's birthday. Just a few pictures and a note that she was growing fast. No response. Same thing at Christmas. A little photo album, digitally sent. No reply. And today, I didn't know if she even checked that inbox anymore. When Nora turned 4, her pediatrician brought up early therapy, not because anything was wrong, but to help her understand her family structure better. Her therapist was a woman named Carla, calm and warm, the kind of person who never seemed rushed. She worked with Nora through storybooks and drawings. One day, Carla asked her who was in her family, and Nora pointed to me and said, "Just Mom." When asked about her real mom, she tilted her head and said, "I think she's far away." I told Carla that was a pretty accurate answer. When kindergarten started, Nora's class did a family tree project. Each kid had to bring in pictures or drawings of people in their family. I printed out one of me and her sitting on the kitchen floor making a mess with pancake batter. She glued it to the center and added a drawing of our cat and her favorite stuffed bunny. No sign of Leah. I asked if she wanted to include her. She said, "She doesn't feel like family." I nodded and didn't push. I tucked the drawing away in a folder I keep. Every milestone, every first, just in case she ever needs proof of how it all unfolded. Nora turned 6th the year Leah came back, sort of. She sent a Facebook message to a friend we both knew from high school, asking if I'd be willing to talk. The friend forwarded it to me. Leah said she was clean, employed, stable. She wanted to see her daughter. I didn't unblock her. I had blocked every channel. My number, my email, even my old social profiles. I'd learned too many times that hope wasn't a plan. I forwarded the message to my lawyer and had him send a response. No contact with Nora unless Leah could show long-term stability. No drama, No unsupervised drop-ins. A week later, a padded envelope arrived at my address. Inside was a 2-page letter in Leah's handwriting. She didn't apologize. Not really. She listed the places she had stayed, the people who helped her. Rehab, therapy, a job at a small print shop. She talked about group meetings and art she'd started again. She said she didn't want custody, just a chance to know Nora, if that was possible. I didn't write back, but I didn't throw it away either. I put the letter in the same folder with Nora's family tree. Almost a year passed. Nora was settled in 1st grade, reading chapter books on her own, and asking questions like whether the moon could ever fall out of the sky. Then a registered letter came to my office. It was from Leah. She had moved back to our city and wanted to meet for lunch. Just me, not Nora, just to talk. I agreed under 3 conditions. It would be at a quiet place, there would be no surprises, and we would talk only as adults, not as sisters, not as parents. I picked a small cafe near the river, neutral ground, public but quiet. Leah was already there when I arrived. She looked different, older, not just in her face, but in how she held herself. Her hair was pulled back, her hands were folded in front of her, and she didn't look like she was about to cry or scream. That was new. We sat down. I didn't bring photos or updates. I wanted to see who she was first, and if she was just going to spin stories again, or if something had actually changed. And for once, Leah didn't launch into excuses. She just looked at me and said she knew what she lost. That was all. I listened. I didn't agree to anything. I didn't promise anything. I just listened. Leah was already seated when I walked into the cafe. She had picked a corner table near the window, far enough from others that we wouldn't be overheard. She looked put together. Simple clothes, no flashy jewelry, a plain hair tie, keeping her curls back. Her hands were shaking a little, but she didn't look manic or strung out like the last time I'd seen her years ago. Just steady. Nervous, but steady. When I sat down, she slid a hardcover journal across the table. No explanation. Just placed it between us and waited. The cover was soft brown with little gold stars on the front. I didn't open it. I asked her what it was. She said it was part of her therapy, a journal of letters she had written to Nora over the past few years. Her counselor encouraged her to write instead of calling. There were entries from birthdays, holidays, random days when she missed Nora for no reason at all. I kept the journal on my side of the table. I didn't open it while we were sitting there. She spoke first. She asked how Nora was doing, what she liked, what her favorite color was. I told her it used to be pink, but now it's purple. Leah covered her mouth with her hand and smiled, then wiped at her eyes. She asked if Nora still watched those old animated fairy tales, the ones with the singing mice. I told her we moved on to space documentaries and baking shows. That made her laugh and cry at the same time. She didn't ask for custody. She didn't even ask to see Nora right away. She said she knew she didn't deserve either. She told me she'd been sober for 2 years, had a sponsor who kept her accountable, and worked at a local print shop doing graphic layouts and packaging designs. She was living in a shared apartment with 2 other women in recovery. She said she had boundaries now, structure, a plan for once. She said she didn't want to make Nora's life harder. She just wanted to be part of it in a way that wouldn't cause confusion or disruption. I asked her what she thought would confuse Nora. She took a deep breath, looked at the ceiling, and said she didn't even know what Nora called me. I told her, plainly, she calls me Mom. She blinked hard. Her hands tensed, but she didn't argue. She nodded. That's fair. You are. I didn't promise anything. I told her I wouldn't spring anything on Nora, but I would bring the journal to her therapist, and if the therapist believed it was appropriate, we could talk about next steps. Leah didn't fight that. She thanked me. She didn't try to hug me. She didn't cry again. She just nodded, picked up her tea, and finished it in one long sip. I took the journal home and gave it to Nora's therapist at our next session. Carla read through it herself first, then picked 2 entries to read aloud during the following week's visit. One was written on Nora's 2nd birthday. It described Leah sitting on a beach with a cupcake and pretending they were celebrating together. The second one was about a dream Leah had where she and Nora were painting a mural together. After the session, Carla told me Nora sat quietly for a while, then asked, "Is she my other mom?" I told her Leah was the woman who gave birth to her, and that she was trying really hard to be better. Nora asked if she had to meet her. I said no. She asked if she could choose if she ever wanted to. I said always. 2 days later, Nora asked if we could look at baby pictures. I pulled out an old photo album and showed her one of Leah holding her in the hospital, wrapped in a yellow blanket with tiny ducks on it. Nora stared at the photo, then asked what Leah's favorite animal was. I told her it used to be foxes. She nodded and walked off to her room without another word. The following week, Carla asked Nora if she wanted to meet Leah in the therapy room, just to say hello. Nora asked what Leah would look like. I said she could see a picture first if she wanted. Nora said okay, but she wanted to pick the day and what she wore. That same night, she took out her purple overalls and a sunflower hair clip. She laid them on her chair and said, maybe next week. I texted Carla to schedule a controlled meeting. Leah wouldn't know the exact day until the morning of, and only if Nora didn't change her mind. I didn't tell Nora what to expect. I didn't coach her on what to say. I only told her she would be in a room with Carla the whole time, and that I would be right outside. And Nora nodded, hugged her stuffed bunny, and said, okay, just a little bit, I'll try. Nora's therapist scheduled the meeting for a Wednesday afternoon. It was kept short, private, and fully supervised. Nora knew Leah would be there, but not until the morning of. I showed her a few pictures from Leah's journal that Carla approved. Most were simple. Leah pregnant, painting a nursery wall with foxes. One blurry photo where she was holding Nora as a newborn, half smiling and clearly exhausted. Nora sat with the photo for a while, then asked if Leah ever fed her. I told her yes, and showed her a picture of Leah holding a bottle with one hand and a burp cloth over her shoulder. Nora didn't say anything else. She nodded once and walked off to grab her favorite stuffed bunny. On the morning of the meeting, she woke up early and picked her own outfit. Purple overalls, the ones with the flower buttons, and a sunflower hair clip she hadn't worn since last spring. She packed her crayon case into her small backpack and asked if she could bring the photo of Leah holding her. I said yes. We arrived at the center 20 minutes early. Leah was already in the lobby, sitting on the edge of a couch, flipping through a magazine without looking at the pages. When Nora and Carla went into the room, Leah waited outside until Carla gave the signal. Leah didn't bring flowers or toys, just a thin paperback tucked under her arm. She walked in slowly and sat down across the room from Nora. She didn't try to hug her. She didn't cry. She asked if Nora liked books. Nora nodded. Leah pulled out a copy of Harold and the Purple Crayon. The edges were soft and the cover was fading, but the pages were clean. Nora took the book and flipped through it front to back, checking every page. No notes, no scribbles. That seemed to matter to her. She nodded again. Leah asked if she could sit a little closer. Carla looked at Nora, who gave a small shrug. Leah moved over one seat. They talked for 10 minutes, just about crayons and dreams. Nora said she liked to draw purple castles and flying cats. Leah said when she was little, she used to imagine drawing a door to another world. Nora laughed and said she would have drawn a ladder to the clouds. Carla let them talk until the timer buzzed. When it ended, Nora stood up, held the book, and said, "Okay, bye now." No hug, no wave. But her voice was calm. She walked back out and handed me the book to hold. Leah stayed inside. I didn't linger. I took Nora to get ice cream, and we didn't talk about it until bedtime. That night, Nora placed the book on her nightstand and left her stuffed bunny in its usual place. She pulled the blankets up, looked at the ceiling, and said, "She's okay. I don't know what I feel yet." I didn't push. The next day, Carla called to check in. Nora had drawn a purple ladder going up to the sky in her therapy journal. No people, no faces, just clouds and stars. She said it looked hopeful. 2 days later, Carla forwarded me a message from Leah. It was just one question. What does Nora smell like now? I stared at it for a long time before answering. I wrote, vanilla lotion and library carpet. Leah replied, she used to smell like warm milk and lavender soap. I didn't think I'd remember. That night, while I was packing Nora's lunch in the kitchen, I had to pause. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't regret. It was just something that cracked quietly in the background, like glass cooling down after heat. Nora woke up early the next day and asked if she could read the book during breakfast. She sat at the table flipping pages while eating toast with blueberry jam. Later that week, Carla told me Leah hadn't missed a single check-in since the meeting. She didn't ask for another visit yet. She just wanted to know if Nora was okay. Nora, for her part, didn't bring Leah up again right away, but she took the sunflower clip out of her drawer and placed it beside her toothbrush. That night, she asked if she could keep the book in her backpack. Nothing else changed. But she didn't hide it either. She just made space for it. I didn't text Leah. I didn't reach out. I didn't open the journal again. But I did add a new photo to the folder, the one of Nora holding the book with jam on her fingers, half laughing, eyes squinting from the morning sun, just in case she ever wants to know how it really started. The next session at the center was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. Nora packed her own bag with markers and a crumpled sheet of heart stickers. She also brought a folded drawing from school, 3 flowers with her name written across the stem of the biggest one. When we arrived, Carla had already taped a long piece of butcher paper across one side of the wall. Leah came in a few minutes after us, sleeves rolled up, no makeup, paint already on one hand like she'd been nervous and touched something on the way in. Nora sat cross-legged and started painting before Leah even said hello. 3 stick figures appeared side by side. One had a purple dress, one had glasses, and one had big red shoes. Nora labeled the first me, the second mom, and the third Leah. Leah glanced at the drawing, nodded once, then picked up a brush. She asked Nora if she wanted to add a dog. Nora chose purple. They made a lopsided dog with 3 legs and a giant grin. Nora stuck a heart sticker on its tail. The timer buzzed, signaling the end of the session. Nora wiped her hands on a napkin and asked if Leah had a favorite food. I answered before Leah could. I told her that back when we lived together in our 20s, Leah lived on frozen waffles and black coffee. Nora smirked and asked if Leah still made waffles. Leah said she hadn't touched one in years. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of something burning. Nora was in the kitchen, standing on a step stool, staring at the waffle maker like it had betrayed her. One of the waffles was black on the bottom. She scraped it into the trash and whispered, "Don't tell her I tried." That week, Carla recommended trying something different, a visit outside the center. She said the therapy space was safe but too structured. If Nora was willing, they could meet somewhere casual. Nora chose the park near our neighborhood. It had chalkboards built into the benches and a shaded area with picnic tables. Saturday morning was sunny but cool. I packed a picnic with peanut butter sandwiches, apple slices, and carrot sticks. Nora brought sidewalk chalk in a plastic bucket. She drew a giant spiral near the swing set and filled it with names, the cats, her teachers, the girl who let her borrow purple pens during art. Leah's name wasn't there, but she left a blank spot at the center. Leah showed up right on time. No gifts, no snacks, no dramatics. She wore a loose gray hoodie and jeans, hair tied back in a simple braid. She knelt beside Nora and helped her draw a castle. They added windows, flags, and a moat. Leah asked if the castle needed a dragon. Nora drew a lizard instead. When Nora got tired, she stood up and brushed chalk off her knees. I started gathering the food wrappers. Nora looked at me and asked if we could go home now. Leah didn't push for more time. She stood and stretched, then said, "Sure. Your mom probably needs rest too." It was the first time I heard her call me that in front of Nora. There was no hesitation, no glance for approval, just a quiet acknowledgement of the role I had taken on and kept for 6 years. Nora looked at me for a second, like she was checking something, then took my hand and said, "Let's go, Mom." Leah stayed by the swings. She didn't follow. She didn't ask for a hug or a goodbye. She stood still, arms crossed, watching us walk back to the car. That night, Nora came into my room while I was folding laundry. She sat on the bed and asked, "Can I still call her Leah?" I told her you get to choose. Always. She nodded, grabbed one of her socks from the pile, and walked out without saying anything else. Later that evening, Carla forwarded me a message from Leah. It was short. Just thank you for not correcting her. I needed to say it. I didn't reply. But I understood something that hadn't been clear before. This wasn't a custody battle. It wasn't a contest. It was two women standing at different points on the same road, trying to love the same child in different ways. One with a daily routine and packed lunches. The other with journal entries, quiet visits, and purple dogs with heart stickers. We weren't opponents. We were coexisting. And for now, that was enough. Mother's Day showed up like it always does. Quiet flyers sent home in backpacks, macaroni crafts drying on classroom windowsills, a reminder written in bold marker on the calendar beside the fridge. Nora came home with a glittered card in her folder, folded crooked and lumpy. A cat was drawn on the front, with uneven, googly eyes and a speech bubble that said, "Meow Mom." I thanked her, gave her a kiss on the forehead, and thought that was it. But later that night, when I opened her backpack again to check her homework folder, I found another card. This one was simpler. Construction paper folded in half, no glitter, just the words Happy Mother's Day in purple crayon. At the bottom corner, in smaller letters, was Leah's name. I placed it on the table and waited. Nora walked in, looked at it, and said, "I made one for her too. I don't know if I want to give it." I told her she didn't have to. She stared at it for a few seconds, then picked it up and taped it to her bedroom wall, next to the drawing she made of the purple three-legged dog. Leah didn't reach out that weekend. No text through the therapist, no message, no anything. Just quiet. Sunday evening, while I was washing dishes, Nora came into the kitchen. She had the second card in her hand. Without saying a word, she folded it in half, then tore it down the center. She dropped both pieces in the trash. She stood there for a second, then said she forgot. I told her maybe she didn't know what to do. Then she asked, is it bad if I want her to disappear again? I said, you're allowed to feel whatever you feel. The next day at school, her teacher pulled me aside during pickup. She said Nora had been quiet, not upset, not acting out, just quiet. Like something had dimmed. No drawings, no stories, no raising her hand during group time. That night, Nora asked if we could skip Leah's upcoming session. I asked if she wanted a break. She said no, but I don't want to do special days with her. No birthdays, no Mother's Day, just regular. I told Carla, and Carla told Leah. Leah didn't argue. She didn't push back. She asked to schedule a one-on-one meeting, just me and her, no Nora. We met at the center 3 days later in Carla's office. She started by saying she froze up. She didn't know how to handle Mother's Day. She said the holiday made her feel like a ghost. Not present, but not gone either. Just something hovering in between. I told her Nora noticed. Leah asked if Nora hated her. I said no. She mourned you. Leah sat still for a moment, then asked, should I disappear again? I said, that's not my choice to make anymore. She nodded and asked if she could still see Nora, just without holidays or expectations. I told her I'd let Nora set the pace. She said, then we start from normal days only. No holidays. Not yet. Later that week, Nora asked if we could go back to the park instead of the therapy room. She didn't want to paint or talk that day. Just sit. We brought snacks and chalk again. Leah joined without a gift, without questions, and without bringing up the card. They drew another castle. This one simpler. No dragons. No flags. Just a square with windows and a tiny door. Nora labeled it Tuesday Castle in chalk. They didn't say much else. But when we left, Nora waved once and said, see you next Tuesday. It was small, but it was steady, and that was what we needed. Darnell. It had been 6 months since Nora set the rule, no special days with Leah. And for 6 months, Leah followed it to the letter. No surprise visits. No holiday notes. No unexpected gifts. Just Tuesday meetups at the park or monthly baking sessions at our house with pre-approved recipes and a set time limit. It started with cookies. Sugar cookies, shaped like stars, covered in too much frosting. Then banana muffins with dark chocolate chips that melted into little pools. They kept it simple. Nora chose the recipe, Leah brought her own apron, and they cleaned everything up before dinner. Nora told me once she's better when we bake. She's not trying so hard. I kept out of the kitchen while they worked. But sometimes, I watched from the hallway. One afternoon, Leah was showing Nora how to use a piping bag. Nora squeezed too hard, and the frosting burst out the top. They both laughed, loud and unfiltered, until Leah wiped her face with a paper towel and Nora licked icing off her thumb. That night, after brushing her teeth and putting on her pajamas, Nora said, I don't feel angry at her all the time anymore. And I think that's a good sign, right? I just nodded and tucked her in. At therapy later that week, Nora drew a picture of a long bridge. One side said then, the other said now. She placed herself in the center. I was on the now side. Leah was behind her, still on the then side, but moving forward. The therapist asked what it meant. Nora said, she's catching up. By June, school was wrapping up. Nora asked if Leah could come to the end-of-year picnic. She promised it wasn't a special day, just a school day with snacks. I said yes. The picnic was held behind the school under a set of large oak trees. Kids ran around with juice pouches and popped water balloons. I brought a small cooler with sandwiches and fruit. Leah arrived with nothing but a folding chair and a sun hat. No balloons, no cupcakes, no camera. Just a chair, a quiet presence, and patience. Nora waved her over, pulled out a juice box, and asked Leah to help open it. Leah used her keys to pierce the foil and handed it back without a word. Later, when Nora introduced her to her teacher, she said, this is my mom's sister. Leah smiled and nodded. The teacher smiled back and moved on to the next family. On the ride home, Nora rested her head against the window and said, I think I want to ask her to come to my birthday this year. I asked, as what? She looked out the window for a while, then said, as someone I care about. We didn't rush it, we didn't talk about party themes or invitations, but a week before her birthday, Nora came into the kitchen while I was loading the dishwasher. She held a piece of paper in her hand with the words birthday schedule written in crayon. On the list, cake, balloons, water balloons, and Mom Leah. She asked if she could call her that. I paused, turned off the water, and asked, "Do you want to?" Nora nodded. "I want her to know she matters, but I don't want to stop calling you Mom." I told her you never have to choose. On the morning of her birthday, Nora wore her sunflower clip and a purple dress with pockets. She spent half the party chasing bubbles and the other half trying to build a fort out of pool noodles. When Leah arrived, she stood at the gate holding a small box of cookies she baked with Carla's supervision. She didn't hand them out, just placed them on the table next to the juice. Nora ran toward her and shouted, "Hi, Mom Leah," then wrapped her arms around her so tight Leah had to crouch down. She cried so hard she had to sit on the patio step. I walked over and handed her a napkin. She wiped her face, nodded once, and whispered, "Thank you for not shutting me out." I looked at Nora, who was already back to chasing bubbles with frosting on her cheek, and said, "Thank her. She's the one who let you in."